episodes. Welcome to the LeggLife podcast. My name is Adam.
My name is Sherry.
Sherry Beth, what episode is this?
73.
Episode 73. I think we missed... Did we miss one last week? Have we missed two?
I don't know.
We've missed some episodes, and I'm sorry friends. But we're back this week, and we're actually talking about a topic this week that we have... Honestly, I feel like we've talked about a lot in different spaces.
Yeah.
We've talked about this a lot on Instagram Lives. We talked about this a lot on... even like videos, and we may have talked about it here on the podcast, but we're finally doing like a dedicated podcast for it. Sherry, what are we talking about today?
Healthy rhythms in life.
And primarily what we're talking about here is, I'm going to use a term like Sabbath, rest, renewal, that kind of stuff. How in the world do you live a life that is not always on the edge of burnout, always on the edge of exhaustion, that kind of stuff?
Yep.
Now, what I want to say from the beginning is that what we're going to share is the healthy rhythm that we have tried to live our life by.
Yes.
We have not done this perfectly. We don't do this perfectly.
Right.
However, we notice when we don't do this.
Yes, we can feel it.
So I want to talk a little bit about why healthy rhythms matter. And just, I am going to actually approach this a little bit from like a spiritual standpoint. You guys know Sherry and I Christians, followers of Jesus, and so a lot of what we look at and do is from like a biblical worldview, including this rhythm.
Yes, but I also think that just the practice is, it doesn't have to be a spiritual or a specifically Christian thing.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. I feel like this should be in every single person, regardless of what you believe or don't believe, kind of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
So, first, I want to start with kind of the why is a healthy life rhythm important.
Yep.
And what I want to look at first is just this reality that so much in creation is rhythmic, right? We see the seasons, we see the tides, we see just like a very rhythmic sort of creation.
Ebb and flow.
And ebb and flow to it. Yet when we look at most of our lives, it's not necessarily rhythmic. It's more like chaotic and crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like, especially for us specifically, for a long time, it was just like pedal to the metal, just like go.
Yes.
And no slowing down, no stopping, no filling up for gas, you're just going.
No, and what we would do, and I think is what most people do, is we would go so hard until we were absolutely on the verge of burnout and exhaustion that we would stop for just long enough to get a little bit enough energy to keep going again.
Right.
And so I'm going to tell you some stories about kind of how this has impacted us. But I want to kind of start with the why of this sort of right from the beginning and why this matters to me. First of all, I think a lot of times we think well, God worked 6 days and rested on the seventh, right? And so you work really hard, and then you rest. Work and then rest.
Right.
The problem is that when you look at the creation story as told in the Bible, that is true, that God did work 6 days and then rested on the seventh. However, Adam and Eve were created on day 6. So Adam and Eve were created, and then their first day was not work and toil and busyness and chaos. Their first day was actually rest together and with God.
Yep.
All of the rest of humanity comes out of that place of rest. It started with rest, and then life flowed out of that healthy place rather than you get exhausted, you burn out, and then you take a nap.
Right.
Right?
Take a bath.
Or take a bath. Or go to the spa. Whatever
Right.
the whole, I don't know, self-care thing tells you to do. Just get barely enough life left to keep going. For me, I am a workaholic.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at this. To the point that there was a time in my life when I was so on the place of burnout that my boss at the time had to basically tell me how concerned he was for me and whisk Sherry and I away to a hotel resort to get away so that we had space just to rest because he was so concerned how close I was to burnout.
Right.
And that's extreme, but you guys, that's me.
Yeah, and And you don't notice it about yourself until it's pointed out to you by your boss or by me or by a friend or by somebody like, dude, you need to take a step. Like, you need to take a breath.
Yeah, because the reality is that if I don't have a healthy life rhythm, I will die. And that's not even like a exaggeration.
Right.
I will literally kill myself working.
Right.
That's just me.
Right. You will just work yourself into such an exhaustion that your body is done.
Completely. And so for me, I look at this creation story and I see rest coming first, and I see the rhythmic kind of nature of all of creation. In fact, when creation isn't rhythmic, we call it like a disaster, right? Mm-hmm. Think of like fires and earthquakes. And when things are out of rhythm, it's a natural disaster. And that's normally how I have lived my life.
Right.
Is like chaos, not rhythm. Mm-hmm. So we, a number of years ago, realized this issue.
Yeah.
And sort of asked the question, well, in light of Adam being a horrible workaholic, in light of the fact that our lives are chaos, mm-hmm. we were like frantically running and going nonstop.
Yeah.
How in the world can we add some order to the chaos? And for us, it's this idea of life rhythms.
Yes. And like Adam started with, we are not perfect at this. We still tend to kind of push ourselves until we're just like, we need a break right now.
Yeah.
And some of it is just like, it's sometimes unavoidable. Like, life just happens.
There are seasons of just like crazy.
Right.
Uh-huh.
But I think, also some of those crazy seasons are predictable.
Yes.
And you can see them coming. And so you can sort of plan ahead for them.
Yes.
And I'm going to use my body as an example.
Okay.
In this. So with my chronic illness, I'm always in pain, but there are things that I do that put me in more pain. Mm-hmm. And there's some things like when we go to Disney, I know that's going to be a really, really hard day on my body. Mm-hmm. And so we plan usually a day ahead of time and a day after for rest.
Yep. Because you have to have it.
Because I have to. And I think that, I feel like that is a fairly good example of when you can predict things and plan ahead for rest and work. Like, plan ahead to have both.
Yeah, so we will go into seasons of life knowing that it's like, man, the next few months are going to be exhaustion.
Yep.
Yep. And so what we do, our rhythm in this area, is if we're going into a season like that, we don't just say, well, once this is over, we need a vacation. Mm-hmm. We actually say, how do we go into this season feeling rested?
Right.
Right? And coming out of it, how do we renew ourselves? How do we recover from that?
Yep.
And so if we're going into a busy season, we actually prioritize rest at the very beginning, not just at the end.
Right.
Because we want to go into hard seasons of work, we want to go into hard seasons of busyness with rest being prior, not always rest being recovery.
Right.
And I think so much of the, and I don't want to bash this, but so much of like the self-care kind of, I don't know, culture out there, what it says is like, work until you're on the verge of death and then take a bath.
Right.
The problem,
and you'll be completely renewed.
Here's the problem, is that it gives you just enough energy to keep going.
Right.
Right? It doesn't do anything to address like what got you there in the first place.
Right.
Life rhythms are what address what got you there in the first place.
Right.
And so, just as Sherry said, we go into busy seasons prioritizing rest first and come out of it prioritizing rest. But it's not just busy seasons, because I would argue that the most important life rhythm that you and I have done and have added to our life is this weekly day.
Yes.
Now, some people would call it like Sabbath. Some people would call it like whatever you want to call it, day of rest. Mm-hmm. For us, it's like our Sabbath day. And here's how that kind of came to be. Sherry, so this term Sabbath, I think, is kind of bastardized, honestly, in culture. Mm-hmm. Growing up to you, what was like a Sabbath day or a day of rest?
Non-existent.
Okay. But it's like Sabbath was like always Sunday.
Sabbath, yes. Sunday was the Sabbath. And on Sundays, we went to church and we would come home. And it was like Sunday was usually a little more down than the rest of the week. Mm-hmm. But it was still like you still have to go. You still have to make sure your homework's done. You have to, like all of these things. And it wasn't really a day of rest.
Sure.
It was a day of less chaos.
It was a day of less chaos. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And so for me, I wasn't raised with like the whole day of rest thing. But once I kind of like started going to church, that sort of stuff, I kind of started to hear this term Sabbath. Here's the problem. I went on staff at a church. There was like 3,000 people.
Right.
Guess what? Sunday was the least restful day of the year.
Right.
Or not day of the year, day of the week.
Right.
It was chaos. It was nonstop work and exhaustion. And I'd end Sunday being like, if that was the day of rest sucks. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, that was exhausting.
I don't want more of that.
I don't want more of that. I don't want more of that.
Right.
And so one of the things that we really started to do is say, okay, this can't be what like God intended rest to be.
Right.
We are not feeling renewed. We are not feeling, you know what I mean? Like connected to the vine. We are not feeling any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so we sort of began this journey with a number of people kind of in our community to ask the question, what is a healthier life rhythm around this idea of Sabbath or a day of rest?
Right. Knowing that Sunday can't be the day of rest.
At the time, it
because
couldn't be.
It's the busiest work day of the week.
When I was on staff at church, that was true. And so we kind of had to throw Sunday out and say, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
But here's how we approached what Sabbath is. And this could be debated. This could be, I don't know, you could find fault in this. Here's what I will say. I feel closer to Jesus and more like Jesus doing Sabbath this way than I did was on staff at a church. Mm-hmm. So take that for what it's worth.
Right.
We sat down and we said, okay, what do we believe to be true about the Sabbath? Mm-hmm. Number one, we think it's a time that God would want us to connect with him. Mm-hmm. We think it's a time God would want us to connect with like our community of people, whatever that looks like. But also we think it's a day for us to not just like escape and nap.
Right. If it's an escape, it's not rest. It's
That's
escape.
Right. It's escape. That's right. And so we actually got really practical and we sat down and we said, okay, who are the people and the things that we believe God has put in our life that when we are with them, when we talk to them, or when we do these things, we genuinely feel like we are alive and renewed. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Not just like, oh, we have fun when we do these, but what are the things that we think make us come alive?
Right.
And there are covenant people, relationships in our lives. Some of those are church people. Mm-hmm. Some of them are not. Mm-hmm. There are activities that we do that really make us come alive.
Right.
Now, there are other activities that are just like death.
Right. And there are people that are draining and not life-giving.
Completely. And so what we said is, gosh, what would our life look like if one day every week we had a day that was filled with the people and the things that made us feel the most alive? Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh.
And only those things.
And only those things.
Yep.
And all of a sudden we started to think about that and it was like the whole rest of our week would change.
Yep.
It would make the weight of the rest of life that we deal with the rest of the week feel so much lighter.
Right.
And so
and that means, if there's people that are more draining to you and not life-giving,
yep,
you don't call them or you don't accept a call from them.
On that day.
On that day. There's no communication with that person because they're draining.
That's right.
If there is a task that has to be done, like laundry, that we hate doing, we don't do it on that day.
But if you're somebody and you can clean the house and you can do laundry, and it's like, man, when I do this, like I genuinely feel alive, and I've got worship music on, or I've got good music on, or I'm, while I'm cleaning the house, I'm talking to my best friend from college who I miss and who I love. Like, cleaning can be Sabbath.
Right.
Cleaning can also be death.
Right. It depends on who you are.
It depends on who you are.
Yep.
And I think that that's one of the reasons that it's important for each individual person to do this.
Yes. And that was going to be my next point, is that there are people and there are things that we do that are draining to me but life-giving to Adam.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about that because we're very different.
Right. And vice versa.
So I'm an extrovert. You're an introvert. What a day of rest looks like for you does not look like for me.
Right.
And so when I teach this stuff at some of our trainings for work, one of the things I always tell people, especially if you're in a relationship or if you're like a parent and you have kids in your house, you cannot make them Sabbath the way that you do.
Right.
And so here's the thing. So right now, our Sabbath day is Saturday. Saturday is a day that 9 times out of 10, maybe even 9.5 out of 10, like work doesn't get me on Saturday. Like I have a hard job. I have a very serious job, but I say no to stuff on Saturday because that's a day that I believe is set aside for rest and for renewal.
Right.
And so same with you.
Yep.
Like with the very rare exception.
Yes.
However, if I say, well, Sherry, Saturday's Sabbath day, and so I've made a list of my favorite things to do today.
We're going to go do this and this and this and this and this and this and this.
We are going to end Saturday and you're going to die of exhaustion.
Correct.
If you come to me and you're like, Adam, I made a list of all the things we are going to do today. And it literally involves just sitting on the couch.
It's one thing. We're going to sit and we're going to read.
I'm going to die of boredom.
Right.
And so I can't make Sherry Sabbath the way I do. And she can't make me Sabbath the way that she does.
Yes.
But we've also had to find, okay, so what are the things that we love doing together? And then do those.
Yes.
Now, there are Saturdays that lean more me. There are Saturdays that lean more Sherry.
Yes.
There are Saturdays that lean more us.
And there are Saturdays where I have to work for 4 hours. And I mean, that's just the nature of my job and what has to happen. So, yep.
Okay.
So in that, like, you know, it's not like every single Saturday, this is how this is.
No, you don't want to become legalistic about it.
Right.
And I think that's one of the dangers around, like, even this idea of Sabbath, is that so many people have been like, Sabbath has to be church and a big Bible. It's like, what if church and a big Bible is actually a place of abuse and harm for you?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, wait, so what do you do with that?
That's not resting.
Sounds horrible.
Restful for you.
And so I think that you have to approach it. And for us, we did approach it from a spiritual standpoint and say, God, who are the people that you've put in our life, our covenant relationships, our church relationships, our friend relationships, our family relationships, the people that make us come alive? What are the spiritual disciplines that make me feel like super connected to God? You know, for me, some of the things that I include on my Sabbath, I love going and doing stuff. No one will be surprised by that. Like Costco and Target can 100% be a part of my Sabbath.
That is 100% not a part of my Sabbath.
But for both of us, creativity is part of ours.
Yeah.
Creativity is part of ours. Even things like museums are part of ours, or going on scenic drives are part of ours.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like there are things that we both are renewed together.
Yes.
And that's the thing. And so if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, when I look at my life, it is burnout to burnout to burnout. My challenge would be to sit down, step one, and make a list. Who are the people and what are the things that when you do them, you feel alive?
And you know what? And a lot of that is being fully honest with yourself.
Yep.
Because there are people who are in your life who have to be in your life, but may be very draining for you.
Yep.
And so being honest about who those people are and setting apart this day to
not have them be a part of it.
Not have them be a part of it. And I understand kind of as parents, yes, kids are draining. And so like we don't have kids, and so it is easier for us to just be like, well, we're just not going to talk to this person. But if your children are draining, I understand you can't just be like, I'm going to ignore you for a full 24 hours. So finding a balance with that.
Well, I think of like the people I work with that do this. One of the things that they do is they have talked about how much they've loved introducing this idea to their kids.
Right.
To say, hey, like, because here's the thing, kids know stuff they like to do.
Yep.
To say, like, you know what? Today, we want a day that is focused on, like, the things that you really love to do. What are some of those things that you'd love to do if you got to pick the things today?
Yeah.
You know, and getting them to understand the importance of prioritizing themselves. And that sounds super, super selfish. It sounds super selfish to say we're prioritizing ourselves. But here's the thing. I believe from the bottom of my heart that too many of us spend so much of our life giving away to other people and we have nothing left to give.
Yep.
And we have got to reconnect to the vine. We've got to reconnect to the things that make us feel alive so that we can live fully in this world. Like, I mean, so we've gotten into plants lately, right? And When you see a plant that is like fully alive and blooming and green and beautiful, that's amazing. But when you see a plant that is like withered and dead and dying, it's like pitiful.
Right.
Most of us just spend our time doing that.
Right. Most of us keep, spritzing ourselves with a little bit of water just to barely stay alive. But like you're not thriving. You're not living.
Yeah. And so I think that to me, one of the biggest things is this idea of like a healthy life rhythm. Now, some people have no element of faith, no element of church, like no like spiritual element of rest. And I would then encourage you, if that's you, I would say just look at the earth around you, right? And look at the rhythmicness of that. And I think that every person, Christian or non-Christian, benefits when they prioritize rest and renewal, because we all need this.
Yes.
And so the same things apply, like who are the people? What are the things make you feel alive? And then how would your life look different if you had that once a week?
Yep.
Now here's the problem. Well, one of many problems. When we started to look into this, I remember looking at our calendar and thinking there's no frickin' way we can do this.
Right.
We were in a season of life when we had things planned. We were both working full-time jobs, and we had things planned every single night of the week. Mm-hmm. Like there was not a night that we were ever free. It was genuinely insane. And
a big part of that was because we were dual income, no kids, dinks, if you will. And I mean, we still are, but like at that time, it was a lot of people were just like, oh, you can help us serve here because you don't have kids, you don't have responsibilities, so it was just like, oh yeah, okay, we can do that on Monday nights, that's fine. And then, another group would come and be like, ooh, we meet on Tuesday nights, and you could help us out with this, like you have time. And we're like, oh, well, okay, we can do that. And then it was just like every single night.
Yeah, what Sherry's saying is that we had really shitty boundaries.
Correct.
And that's exactly what it is.
Like, and we didn't know how to say no, or we felt bad saying no because it was true.
It is true.
We had the time, technically.
Yeah.
And we really just got to the point where we were just like, we would get off work and go do this thing. And they were all good things.
100%.
Like, none of it was unhealthy or bad. It was just that the quantity of it was unhealthy. And so we really, we had some hard talks with each other and with the people that we were helping out. And we just said, we can't keep this pace up. And something's got to give. And so for a season, we actually said no to everything.
We did. We cut back. We pretty much cut almost everything out of our life.
Which was also hard.
Yeah. Because saying no feels so selfish.
Saying no feels super selfish.
It's like you're asking us to help. I remember one of the places we were serving was at a homeless shelter on one of the nights, which is what a cool thing to do. What a needed thing to do. And to go to them and say, actually, we're not going to serve at the homeless shelter because we need to prioritize ourselves. That sounds so horrible.
It does, and we didn't phrase it like that, but it was like that's really what it was.
That's what it was.
We were just like, we can't keep up this pace, and we have said yes to every single thing that's come along, and we just can't.
And if we would have not done that, and this is just the reality, if we would have not done that, and if we would have kept on that pace, either Sherry or myself or our marriage 100% would have gone away, without a doubt.
Right.
And then, what good do we do at all?
Right.
And so it felt very selfish in the season to say no. But now that I'm looking back a decade later, I realize that what we have gained and the impact we've been able to have has been 10 times what it would have been, maybe 100 times what it would have been, if we would have just kept on doing as much as we frickin' could.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and so it's like, so that's crazy. And so I think that for you, Sherry, let me ask you, what does this weekly rhythm, what do you get because of it? Like, how is life different for you as an introvert kind of because of this?
So for me, I just need more downtime as an introvert and as, with someone with chronic stuff. I just need more downtime in order to make my brain and my body and my emotions go. And so for me, if I don't get it, then I'm just exhausted going into my work week. And things for me, mentally, physically, I have a harder time staying on task. I have a harder time caring.
Yeah.
which, affects my actual work. And so, like, if I don't get this time, then work is terrible.
How do you balance? Because there's this because like a book or binging Hallmark movies, those can be restful and renewing and life-giving, but they also can be just like escapism.
Yep.
How do you like figure that? How do you balance? How do you know when like, oh man, I'm simply in these books because like I'm trying to escape from life? And just so you know, like our kind of belief is that escapism is actually where addiction is born. Like it's the birthplace of all addiction. And so we try to pay attention. It's like, am I doing things to try to just escape from life? I have no problem with a glass of wine in the evenings, with multiple glasses of wine in the evening, to enjoy them. But what I need to do is watch myself, because if all of a sudden I'm having a glass of wine because life is so hard and so heavy and I need wine to not deal with it, that's an issue.
We have gone through those seasons.
We've gone through the season.
Yeah.
We've had to have hard conversations. And so for you, what are the things you look for to know that it's like actually life-giving and not just escaping?
It is hard, and again, it's just being honest with yourself. And again, we are not perfect at this, and there are weeks at work that are really hard, and I find myself escaping more than resting. And I know that. And so for me, some of that is like, okay, so for me, like I really enjoy reading and binging Hallmark movies and whatever. And so like if I find myself doing that because I just don't want to think about work, or I don't want to think about this relationship that's falling apart, or I don't want to, if I'm specifically doing these things because I don't want to think, then I will make myself not do those things, and I will talk to you, or I will, let's plan a girls' night. Let's, with my girls that are life-giving to me. And I will make myself do something else that is specifically life-giving, because I know that for me, reading and movie watching, while it is restful, it can also be escapism. And so I don't want to fall into that trap of escapism. Sometimes I still let myself because I just don't want to think about it.
I think sometimes we all let ourselves.
Right. But no, I don't let myself just live there.
That's really good. I think that one thing that can be hard is to say, like, how can, I was going to say this earlier and I kind of forgot, like, how do you even get started? Because, again, when we talked about this, I looked at our calendar. It was busy every night of the week. And the thought of, like, I have to give you a day felt like too much.
A whole day?
Yeah, it's like, it couldn't happen.
Right.
And so we kind of started and said, okay, can I give you a block of time in one day? Right? And so it was
can we take one thing off our plate and have an evening free?
That was what it was. Like, can we get 2 hours in one evening? Right? Let's start with that. Yeah. And then it was like, okay, so what would it look like for 2 hours in one evening? And we started doing things. Like, we started, like, kind of, I don't know, experimenting with what we loved to do together that was life-giving.
Right. I think that's kind of when we implemented, like, date night.
It was.
And we put it on the calendar. It was another thing on the calendar, but it was one night a week. I think it was Fridays.
At the time, it was Fridays.
Yep, where it didn't matter what was happening, that, if there was a big something going on that Friday, it didn't matter because that was date night.
Yep.
And that was our set-aside time where we did things that we enjoy doing together. And that's it.
That was it.
Yep.
There were people that would call us on date night that we would not answer the phone because we knew that was going to be a conversation that it just derailed the purpose of the evening.
Right.
Right? It was not life-giving. It was absolutely life-sucking, depressing, all that kind of stuff. And so there were people that we would not talk to because the focus of that night was on the things that together made us feel alive. Right. And the people. It's like we would spend time with friends, that kind of stuff. And I will say, I'm not sure there is one thing that we have implemented. Because we get a lot of people that talk about a relationship, and here's the thing: I want to remind you, what you see on social media it's the edited version of the highlight reel. It's true for us. It's true for everybody you see.
Right.
Right. Yes, we have a great life, great marriage. Perfect? Absolutely not.
Right.
But one of the reasons that we can say that we we love to travel together, love to go on adventures together, love to live life together, I genuinely believe is because of this.
Yep.
If without us prioritizing this, I don't think people would look at our marriage and say, oh, a couple goals. Mm-hmm. Like, I just don't. I think that this is what has primarily contributed to that.
Right. And I think that there was a season in our marriage where people would have been like, ooh.
Oh, without a doubt.
Mm-hmm. Where we were like, oh.
Where I was just gonna say that because we ourselves looked at it and said that.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, there are a million different healthy rhythms, but for us, the one that we prioritize the most is that weekly rhythm of dedicated time for myself, dedicated time for Sherry, dedicated time for us together. There are times, sorry, you guys may be able to hear sirens outside. There are times that Sherry comes to me and she is just like, I need a day. Like, I need time. But here's what I'll say. More often than not, it's not Sherry coming to me or it's not me coming to her. It's now that we recognize it in each other. You know what I mean? It's that, it's like, oh, I can tell that Sherry really needs, like, her time. She needs time today because I can see her fading.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I see her light fading. I see her going away. Like, she needs renewal. She needs rest. She needs to, like, reconnect, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And again, we do that differently. And so, like, when you see that in me, then you'll wipe our calendar for a weekend day or the whole weekend.
Yep.
And just say, we're not doing anything this weekend. You are going to sit there under your blanket. We're going to have a fire in the fireplace and you're going to read and we're going to watch movies and that's it.
Yep.
Because he can see me pushing too hard.
Yep.
And sometimes I don't recognize it in myself. Like, I don't realize how close to exhaustion I am. Yeah. And he sees it and he's just like, well, okay, we're gonna erase our calendar.
Completely.
And, for him, for me, that's what we have to do. We have to clear the calendar.
Yep.
For him, if I can see him fading,
dying of boredom,
or just exhaustion because work is crazy or whatever, I'm like, okay, this weekend we're gonna go and we are going to go to farmers markets and we're gonna take drives down the Turning an Arm and we're gonna go do because that's what you need to do to renew.
Yep.
And so that's what we're gonna do because you need to go and do. Mm-hmm. So we will add things to our calendar that are life-giving, but we're adding things. And so, we just, because we rest and renew differently. Yeah.
And I think the one thing that's important is that there are weeks that this can't happen, but here's what I will say. Now that we've been doing this for a while, I know when we don't. You know what I mean? Like, I feel it after a couple weeks of, not having this time.
Yep. And because we work all week, it's usually weekend days. And if we plan things throughout the weekend, we try really hard not to do that multiple weekends in a row.
That's exactly
because of this. Because then it's just go, and we don't get any stop.
Yep. So Saturday is our day right now. And part of the reason even though I'm not on staff at church anymore, I still teach at church from time to time. There's still church work that needs to be done. And just to be quite honest, there's an element of that is life-giving, but there's an element of that is work. And so Sundays are still hard for that for me.
Yep.
Whereas Saturday gets to be our day. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, I'll use even this week as an example. You and I are kind of doing a sort of a very different kind of work weekend this weekend.
Yep, it is work.
But
it's a different kind of work.
It's a different kind of work, but also I'm okay doing that this weekend because I know next weekend we're going to Fiji.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so it's but I wouldn't stack 5 weekends in a row of things like this because I know that that's not fair to you. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to this kind of covenant we've made with each other that we're going to have this day dedicated to people and things that make us feel alive.
Not even 5 weekends in a row. We try not to do 2 weekends in a row of that.
It just gets too much.
It gets too much.
Yep, absolutely. So
because then you've had 3 solid weeks of just nonstop.
Blah. And I do think it's important that no matter what your belief is as you're listening to this, that this to me is not just for us. It's a spiritual practice and a physical practice, right? We feel renewed spiritually. We feel renewed mentally, emotionally, all of that kind of stuff.
Physically,
all of that. We feel renewed when we do this. And so I just feel like whoever you are, think of how life would be different if you had this in your life.
Yep. And again, like if you can't block out a 24-hour period, start with a couple of hours. Start with an evening a week and just be like, this is my time. This is our time. This is whatever it is.
Maybe it's after your kids go to bed. I know that one lady I work with, she tells the story about when her and her husband started doing this. They would take an egg timer because they had, what did they have? They have 3 or 4 kids under 4. I don't know, something like that. But like a lot of kids under a young age. And they would take an egg timer, like a kitchen timer, and basically set 20 minutes. And they'd say, all right, mom and dad are going to have date night in the living room for 20 minutes.
You are not welcome.
Play. Yeah, that's exactly right. And she said they would even put up a little rope or something, a little piece of tape, and basically say, we're going to have date night in the living room. As soon as this goes off, you are welcome to come get us. You know what I mean? And what she said is that their kids would stand and look around the corner and just watch them. But what a healthy thing to watch for kids, right? They're watching mom and dad prioritize themselves and each other.
And their relationship.
I love that.
Yep.
And so it is not easy for everybody, but here's what I will say. I genuinely mean this. I believe I would not still be alive today if I didn't start doing this.
Yep. I agree.
That's not even an exaggeration. I really believe that if my boss at the time hadn't seen the burnout that I was on the verge of and whisked us away and basically told me in really hard language what he saw about to happen in my life, I believe I would have worked myself to death already.
Yep.
I'm only 42.
Right.
At the time, I was in my early 30s.
Yeah.
And it was that bad.
Yep.
And so this not only saved my life, this saved my, I think, our marriage. It has, without a doubt, been the number one thing that we have in our life as far as rhythm that has made our marriage and our life overall healthier and happier.
Yes. And to go back to kind of how you started this, we are not resting from our work. We're working from our rest.
Yeah, we prioritize that.
Right, which is a mind shift, I think, for a lot of people. Instead of, working to exhaustion, you're working out of your rest. And so you can, and honestly, again, I am so much more productive at work when I am rested.
Yeah.
When I can go into the work week knowing that I have all of these things on my plate, all of these things on my to-do list that have to get done. If I'm starting the week exhausted, then those things rarely get done. They don't get done well. If I am starting the week rested and working out of that rest, I can blow through that to-do list and usually have time to spare.
It's really true.
Yep.
It's really, really true. And so there you go. Sherry, anything else about this kind of healthy rhythm topic?
I don't think so. I mean, it is really hard to get going. Yeah. And, again, we just started with an evening a week and we just said, this is our time. And I think that everybody can do that. Everybody has the capability of that. No matter how busy your life is, I think that everybody has a few minutes here and there that they can set aside, and then that time can grow. And as you prioritize it, your friends, your family, your children, whoever will see how much healthier you are. Yeah. And you will feel much healthier, and you will have the energy and the mental and physical capacity to take on the rest of your life.
You have more of yourself to give away to the people and the things that really matter.
Yep.
That has been the biggest thing for me. I felt like for so long I lived my life in such a way that a million things got a tiny fraction of me. That sucks.
Right.
And so I feel like making this change, and I'm 100% not good at this. I am still a workaholic, right? It's kind of like recovery. It's kind of like you're, right? It's like I'm still in recovery of this. But I feel like more things get more of me rather than me feeling like I have to give myself to everything.
Right. And, instead of, I'm going to use a cup as an example. I think, you can fill up this cup and dump it out, and it spreads and it makes more of an impact if this whole cup is dumping, right? if you have nothing but mist left in this cup, nobody really gets anything. And it's just, you're exhausted. Everybody around you is just like, this person, like, I'm not getting anything from them. I'm not getting what I need from them. Because you have nothing to give. Mm-hmm. If you take the time to make sure that your cup stays full, then you will have things to give.
Yeah. And I think that's what, like, if you're a mom listening to this, the greatest gift you can give your kids is a healthy and full version of you. Mm-hmm. If you're a dad listening to this, the greatest thing you can give your kids is a dad who gets to be present and with their kids, not who always collapses on the couch in exhaustion. That's what they know only of their dad. Right. If you are a younger person, I would say start this rhythm early.
Yeah, get it in your vocabulary and your rhythms now.
Completely. And it will feel selfish. It's still, we've been doing this for a long time. It still feels selfish. Mm-hmm. When somebody wants us on our Sabbath day and we say no, it still feels selfish.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it never doesn't. But I know the alternative for us.
Yep.
This is better.
And really, it's for a long time we felt like we had to explain and, just say like,
it's like, oh, sorry, our day's full.
We're setting this aside, like whatever. And again, that just feels really selfish. And we've had to remind ourselves that no is a complete sentence. Mm-hmm. No, period. People don't need an explanation. You just want to give it to them.
Yeah. Well, it's the people pleaser in us.
Right. It's the people pleaser. And it's, the people that don't understand. But again, like you don't owe them an explanation. You can say no and not have to explain why.
100%.
And that's something that we are still working on.
Yep.
I for sure still feel like I had to explain because they're going to take it wrong. They're going to think I'm selfish. They're going to think whatever. It doesn't matter. I
think the way to end this is by one reminder. Mm-hmm. You are worth it.
Yes.
Like your relationships, your marriage, your life, your freaking sanity is worth prioritizing in this.
Your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your
this impacts everything. This impacts everything.
Emotional health. I can always tell when I'm really close to burnout because I cry about everything.
Yeah.
Like your my emotions are, if I have any kind of high emotion, high or low, I am crying. Yep. And if I find myself easily crying about everything, I'm just like I need to rest.
Yeah, I'm too close.
I'm too close to just full exhaustion.
Yep. So there you go.
Yep.
Healthy rhythms.
That's
just how we do it.
Yep.
Maybe some of you do it differently. Would love to hear how you do it. But also, here's what I want to know. What are the things, you don't have to say the people, what are the things that make you feel the most alive? Maybe you're a creative person. Mm-hmm. Maybe you're a plant person. Maybe you're a nature person. In Alaska, we have a lot of nature people that it's like, I feel alive when I'm out like hiking.
Maybe building spreadsheets is your thing and it brings you to life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Do it.
And so I just want to know, over on YouTube, go to YouTube, search LeggLife Podcast, hit the subscribe button, find this episode, and then let us know, like, what are the things that really, when you do, make you feel alive? And really ask that question, because this is the question that started for us, was, what would our life look like? How would our life be different if we had a dedicated time each week that was just given to the people and the things that we believe God has put in our life to make us feel alive?
Yep.
Because for so long, this idea of a day of rest was just simply about like church and the Bible. You guys, I love church and the Bible. And there are times that is an active part of what my day looks like, right? Church, normally. Our community from there, absolutely. But there have been times in my life when those were legalistic practices that absolutely sucked the life out of my relationship with God and my life. Mm-hmm. Right?
Right.
And so that's just the truth.
You're only doing it because you have to.
100%. I'm checking a box.
Right. You're checking a box. And if that's where you're at, stop.
Go take a frickin' hike.
Go do something else. Do something that will bring life.
Yeah, I agree. So there you go.
Yep.
There's our heresy for the week. Boom.
And here's the thing. I don't think that it's heresy.
Yeah.
I think that it's think that it's healthy, and I think that it's what we see in the Bible.
I think it's what you see rhythmically. I just think that, I think that it makes sense. When I think of God as Father, I think, what in the world would a good father want for his kids? Obedience or life? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not saying disobedience. Like, don't be out there being like, oh, what makes me feel alive is Molotov cocktails and riots. Maybe get a good therapist.
Correct.
Right? Like, maybe fix it because you're kind of crazy. But it's like, I just feel like, what would my father want from me? Mm-hmm. He'd want me to be fully myself and fully alive and fully enjoying the life that he came to give, not just like barely squeaking by, crawling
Checking
because
boxes.
of exhaustion and burnout.
Yep.
Boom. All right, friends.
Boom.
We love you guys so much. Hope you enjoyed our heresy. We'll see you next week on the LeggLife podcast. Bye.
Bye.